Welcome back to Logical Magic Examining Esoterica. Hey, today we're talking about the most maddening of healing journeys, divine timing in your life, what it means, what it doesn't mean, why your initial reaction to it will be basically screaming blue bloody murder, because divine timing at play in your life basically means that nothing happens in a fateful journey until it is the right time and things are in alignment. So it has nothing to do with dates. It has nothing to do with actual time, but rather the aligning circumstances of your life. And today, my friend Jacob Fluharty is back here talking with me about divine timing. We're both tarot readers. We both have to explain it to people. And here we are talking about it because it has influence in our own lives and we both encounter it on our own healing journeys. Hey, Jacob, how are you doing today?
Hello, Alane. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, so divine timing. How have you encountered it in readings?
In the most infuriating way possible, probably.
Oh.
Because I think that's something that, for my clients at least, they are very interested in the timing of everything.
Mhm.
They just want to know, when is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? And I've expressed my frustration with you numerous times about how I am just awful at offering that kind of information. I'm not able to put things in the timeline very well because I don't see time as this linear thing, and when we're talking about it in the divine sense, and that can be very frustrating for people because, like you just said, like it's not so much based on the calendar date, but on energetic dates almost, or like things
Mhm.
are going on. Like you have to hit those milestones right before things are going to start happening, and so that's kind of it's very difficult to explain to people,
That's why
because
I wanted to do a top
yes,
podcast about it.
we as static creatures in a world that is so linear to us, we have trouble conceptualizing this idea of like time existing outside of that construct, right? And so,
Exactly. We have a very firm structure around the idea of time. We tick off seconds, we count minutes, days, weeks, and months. But that is not what divine timing is based in. Divine timing is we take the time that we take, the amount of like our journey is not measured in those seconds, those minutes, those hours, and those days. It is measured in our growth and our ability to evolve. So divine timing is an evolutionary mark, not a timing mark on a calendar. And you talked a little bit about, and I encounter it too, because clients want to know when is this, when is this, when is this? And please understand, you are very unlikely to get those dates because it's called living your life to outcomes. And as soon as you start trying to do that, because subconsciously you will start, if you hear that something is going to happen in the first 2 weeks of March, you're on high alert in that time period. And you're trying to put yourself into a position to make something happen. And you never have to make anything happen in divine timing. Here's how to look at basically your soul's journey. It's not, as you said, it's not linear. It's not point A to point B to point C to point D. What it is that most of our life is dictated by our choices. Those will be represented by the minor arcana in tarot, which are things like things with numbers, and the court cards, which are pages, knights, kings, and aces. These are the court cards, but the major arcana, like the magician, the death card, the empress, the emperor, all of those are about fateful forces at work in our life. And they're also the archetype cards. And when you're on a journey, you can make all of these little choices. We really do have free will, because that's where people are like, how the heck does this even work? If everything is fated and you can't make something happen before it's meant to, what is the point of anything something else is steering
well,
us?
what are we doing here? We're giving you any information if it's already written down anyway.
Exactly. But that is not what that means. It
Right.
means that in the course of your life, and it can take from 0 days old to 102 years old, to have the fateful milestones happen in your life. And you guide yourself to them through your choices, because this is a learning journey, this is an evolutionary journey, and this is a spiritual and emotional journey. Basically, the choices that we make are the only things that make the difference in how quickly our journey progresses. And part of making divine timing your friend is a concept called surrender, which is, again, people get so confused, and I don't blame them, about, well, hey, if everything's within our journey is made from our choices, then how are there fateful occurrences? because you have a higher aspect to yourself that is actually standing outside the flow of time and wants you to perhaps learn how to be independent, perhaps learn how to be successful, perhaps learn to connect on an intimate level, perhaps learn about spirituality. Everybody gets a different journey. And is it possible to miss fateful milestones? Sort of. That's called a crossroads moment. And I'm a crossroads guide. Most tarot readers actually can be crossroads guides. They give you information and then you walk forward. Everything that you get in a tarot reading is a potential future based on the current trajectory of your choices. Once you get that information, you can then make different choices. And in your own life, Jacob, like there have been things you've been waiting for. And how difficult was divine timing as a concept for you as you kind of started learning about it, started reading, and started understanding what it encompasses?
Well, I think for me and for a lot of people that I talk to, at least that are United States based, we either come from a more Christian or monotheistic background, or that's where I'm going to come from with that. I'm not going to speak for anyone else but myself on this one. And for the longest time, we come from this framework of, God has this timing and we are living within this plan that God has. And it's still given to us in this very linear fashion. Like if you do X, Y, and Z, then that is the prescription for God to allow, A, B, and C to happen because of that. And for me, I had to realize that wasn't necessarily true. I had to finally understand that my concept of time with the wibbly wobbly, the back and the forth, the having to turn around and try again, it was very difficult for me because I wanted to be able to do something and then see the result right afterwards.
Well, and everybody does. No.
Yeah, and it was never there was never this idea presented to me that's like you're going to take 2 steps forward, but you might fall back 5 more just to keep going back on the path. And it was very infuriating for a very long time, to be completely honest, where I couldn't understand why. And I think we've talked about this before, where I'd be looking for answers, and then I would get a certain answer, but then it didn't work out maybe the way that I thought it did because I had put it into a different framework. And it wasn't I was expecting, by spring, this is going to happen. Well, it was well, yeah, spring was when we as a collective, spirit guide, whatever, was we think this is when you're going to figure this lesson out, but there's a rock in your river
to learn it
to put it. Right. And so I missed that
focus on. That's the thing to focus on. When you get information about a fateful occurrence in your life, it is not that it will 100% happen that way, but rather you will have the opportunity in this particular area of your life, and it will be up to your choices which direction that path takes. And when we think about our life, stop thinking of a line. Start thinking instead something more like a DNA structure, because it twists and it turns, and then we we are guided back to our central timeline markers, which are our fateful occurrences and our karmic occurrences. Karma is lessons. It is not rewards, nor is it punishment. It is the lessons that we came here to learn, and everybody has a different lesson plan. Think of it as everybody having a different major. Everybody's journey is actually valid and authentic for themselves, and it may differ wildly from yours. And hey, you pointed out something that is incredibly important in the divine timing concept, which is that when you approach it from a monotheistic or a Christian doctrine standpoint, it sounds like you are being held by the hand and guided down a path. And that is only partially true. When I talk about spirit guides, I'm always trying to get people to understand, because I will get people because I work with trauma survivors so much, they're furious with their guides because how could you let this happen? Why didn't you do a better job?
Yes. I was hoping we were going to talk about
our
that.
Our spirit guides are not working. They're not making our choices for us, and they're not presenting our opportunities for us. They are working with the raw material that we present to them with our choices, meaning they work with our choices, trying to give us the best possible outcomes on the path that we have with our own free will started down. And as for instance, I'm always using the marriage I should have left behind at least a decade before I did. And I had been being told to by multiple sources that please get out of there. And I just wouldn't, because I had my identity way too wrapped up in I really wanted to have a long-term relationship because of my own shattered childhood, which had no family and no relationships. I focused on this one thing, and I slowed down my own journey because of that. And so that's when you start feeling angry with your guides. Please understand that they genuinely, all they ever do is look at what did they do now? Oh, okay. Oh, they chose option B. Oh, I wish they hadn't chosen. What can we do with that? And
Right.
then they try and guide you with that. It is never, when we get angry at the concept of divine timing, that tells us what we need to heal. So your response to almost anything contains the information of what you're still working on. And when you first knew me, if somebody said the words divine timing to me, I was like, okay, I need to go break some stuff because it's that frustrating.
So much is, yes.
It
Especially like
genuinely
coming from this like Christian background that I came from. And like I grew up in this era of like Protestant prosperity gospel being very, very like the main idea at the time, like throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, before like end times doctrine really hit the shelves. Prosperity gospel was where it was at. And it was this idea that like God's going to take care of you, God's going to give you things as long as you are doing what you're supposed to be doing in the church. And I think that kind of
like rewards and punishments.
yes.
That's not the
God
way
wants you to be happy. God wants you to be prosperous. God's going to take care of you as long as you are, pious enough towards, the Bible. And it was weird because like as a also coming from a Catholic background with, faith with works and all these different, I had a lot of going on in my brain. And so whenever I moved away from those, I was still trying to shed this idea of if I do this, then God will do this or that or whatever.
Trying to earn the cookie.
Right. And so in the same way, I think whenever I talk about guides with people who come from that kind of background as well, they're expecting their guides to be almost like the Christian concept of like a guardian angel who's like going to give you things and help you and protect you, blah, 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 which is like only part of the story. Like, yeah, they do like live those roles in certain ways, but at the end of the day, they're really just there to help work with the decisions that like help you with the decisions that you're making, but they don't I'm having trouble.
So the easiest way to do this is your guides are your mentors in an educational journey. So like if you're in a master's program or a doctorate program at a university level, you have advisors.
That's beautiful.
And
yes.
That is what a guide is. And a guardian angel is the one that it's like they're going too fast on a wet road. Oh crap. And then they step in and they try to influence somebody else's thinking to perhaps do something that will stop your journey, cause you to slow down. They will cause a small fright so that you're like checking your speed, and they can't make you do anything. But that is the difference between a guardian angel and a guide. A guide is a mentor who works with, this is my study plan. What are your notes on what I'm doing? You might want to try this. You might want to try that. You might want to try the other thing, but they have no true power to alter our circumstances or our path. Whereas our guardian angels, and by the way, if you invoke, and I work with archangels, and please understand they have a completely different understanding of the merit and the weight of suffering. So they don't invest overly in it. So if you're like calling out to angels to please protect me, if you're in a bad relationship, they might burn down your house to get you out of it. And I'm not kidding. Like if everybody survives, but you lose absolutely everything, but they're like, well, she wanted out of that relationship. This is going to do it. She'll be okay.
Right.
3-4
like
years. She's fine.
They
will literally do that. They are the EMTs of the spiritual world. Whereas spirit guides are your educational advisors on your path who work with the lesson plan that you have in a determined set of course of actions decided to take. And that's the difference. And I can explain a concept behind divine timing and why it is in place. When you first knew me, I wanted a completely different set of circumstances in my life than I do now. Mm-hmm. I was not healed. I was still very traumatized from a very, very bad relationship. I was extremely codependent because I had been in a toxic relationship for 20 years. And then I had not come from good circumstances. So I had never developed the self-worth, the self-belief, the confidence, the self-love to want to walk my journey by myself. And so I wanted these very easy set of circumstances like that, here's this, here's that. I thought it meant a nice, easy path would be the best thing for me. But I have come from wanting a particular set of circumstances, even including my success, and it has completely changed over the course of 3 years. Now my idea of success is completely different from the day that we met, and I want completely different things. So if I had been given the things I was asking for at that particular time, it would, and I'm much happier. I'm much more peaceful. The things that I want to do now are less about what society deems successful and more about what will give me the greatest connection to my own existence, what will make me happiest, what will let me help others in the greatest way that I can. And it has far fewer of the like trappings of success that our world tells us we need. Because my idea of what would make me happy has changed as I have changed. And that at the core of it is the truth of divine timing. The divine knows what it's doing. My higher self understood that about me. At the point I started asking for things, it was kind of like, if she's a trauma victim, my God, she needs all sorts of emotional rehab down there. Doesn't know it. We are going to delay things. And it almost felt like a carrot in front of a cart horse as I was chasing things.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think I went through it at the same time that you were going through it a little bit. Like, I was so determined that I needed to go back to school. I needed to get my degree. I needed to go into therapy work. I needed, like, this was the path. And the whole time, like, bless you, but you were like, I don't know about all that. I'm like, no, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And then, like, and I hate to, I'm not drawing a connection here at all. But then, of course, like, COVID happened, and then I had to, like, my entire life fell apart. And then I realized, oh, well, darn, what am I supposed to do now? Like, my entire track has been thrown off. Everything that I've been working for and everything that I wanted is now so much farther away from being attained. And I'm just like, what am I doing wrong? Like, everything was going so well. And then finally I had to understand that in the divine timing scheme of things, like, I was searching after the wrong goal, probably. But B, I was trying to make things happen on a timeline that was different than what was necessary for my own personal growth and healing. Because I just recently have gotten to a point where I feel more healthy overall, mentally, spiritually, etc. And so it took all of that quote unquote loss of my like plan that I had in my head in order to understand that, like you said, like, where I'm at now is probably a lot better than where I would have ended up if I had, like, stayed on this path. Just for me personally, in the way that I feel like my life story is supposed to unfold. I had to shed the expectations of, like, family and society and start living in a truth that was more my own,
more in alignment with your actual soul. And you brought up something, because we serve that role for each other. Both of us, both of us can be very, like, mulish and determined, and we read for each other. And I'd be doing these readings, and it's like, this and that, and they're like, no, I think you're going to swerve here, and you're like, no. And then you turn around and give me a reading, and you'd be like, it's this, it's that, and I'd be like, no. So remember, we are our own biggest stumbling block, and there's something in the concept of divine timing, which is all about your soul's journey in this world, trying to evolve past, basically the things that hold us back from being in perfect understanding that we encompass the love of the universe and connecting us to others. We're trying, all of us, to evolve, basically climbing up a staircase to get to the pinnacle of who we can be. And in divine timing, there is a concept called ego death, and there is a concept called the dark night of the soul. Now, ego death is such a hard one, because ego death is not saying you're wrong as you are. It is saying step outside of yourself to see yourself clearly, be accountable for the ways in which you got in your own way, which, oh my God, a master at that. If they gave out gold stars for getting in your own way, this place would be blank. I would have a galaxy worth of them, because I'm very stubborn sometimes. I've been my own worst enemy.
Oh, yeah.
Being able to recognize that is part of ego death. Being able to recognize the things, like, I've needed to learn patience, which is also part of divine timing and why it will drive you a little bit nuts. If you hear the words patience and you react to that with frustration, with anger, with, you know what's telling you? You need to learn patience. And why patience is so important, it is so that you can enjoy your journey, so you can encompass your own full power. Patience is peace, but patience is ultimately powerful, because power in your everyday life is understanding that in every single minute, You have the capability to choose how you will view your life, how you will view the people in it, and how you will view what you are going to do next. When people get frustrated with divine timing, it's because they're trying to take a journey on an interstate. Where's my exit to get to my destination?
Mm-hmm.
That is not what happiness is. Happiness exists as a concept, as a possibility in every single moment of our existence, how we are choosing to view our lives, because we only ever get 1 second at a time, 1 day at a time. If you think you will only be happy when you have your psychology degree and are a therapist, or when you have a particular relationship, or when you have had a child, or whatever your particular mile marker that you're so desperate to get to, what you were doing is frittering away the space in between now and then, and not appreciating it, not enjoying your life, not feeling any resonant connection or joy in the moment to moment. So divine timing, as soon as you get into that energy where you're like, it's going to work out the way it's meant to work out. What am I meant to be learning? How am I meant to be growing? What is, if I can't get to this thing that I really want, is there a possibility that it's not for me, no matter how determined I am? And ego is the thing that tells us want, 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 want. Whereas ego death gives us the concept of, well, maybe, because like for me, looking at my relationship history, I do not have good taste. Like historically, I have gotten in my own way, made the worst possible choices around that, and caused myself more suffering than I needed to. If I'd listened to the voices of my friends around me, if I'd listened to some of the research that I did on a bunch of things, I could have had an easier journey. But a lot of people who are able to manifest and do magic and who have a good psychic connection suffer from this. The ability to alter the energy and basically the reality around you through the strength of will. And sometimes our willpower is the very thing that causes to block out our divine timing, our fateful occurrences, things like our soulmates, things like our life's purpose, because we'll get very fixated on what our ego wants, because that's about our feelings and the ways in which we have been damaged, usually in childhood. Hey, listen, if you can't make something work out and you can't make something work out and you can't make something work out, try to do your shadow work. Because your shadow work contains the emotional damage that is actually causing you to want things that are about meeting a need rather than walking a path. And there is a very big difference between the two. And you've had that whole journey yourself too, because in the time that I've known you, you have gone through a sea change of things, but you're happier now, correct?
Right, yeah, because I finally had to stop looking at my life as a series of milestones and like big events, right? Like I was losing the forest for the trees almost, or flip it, or however that phrase goes, because I was so busy being focused on the end goal, and I was missing. I wasn't stopping to smell the roses. I'm full of these phrases today. But yeah, no, that was my thing. Was like I was just so busy focused on what I was trying to achieve that I was missing everything along the way. I was missing the experience. I was missing the lessons. I was missing the signs. I was missing, like, when I look back on it, and hindsight's 2020. But like I can see all these moments looking back where I was just like, well, if I had just taken that moment for what it was worth, I could have been on a different trajectory for a while now. But instead, I was just so focused on what I thought was right, or what I thought I needed, that I missed everything along the way that was pointing me in a different direction. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm here now, but I could have been here 3 years ago, if I had just, taken life one moment at a time instead of constantly working towards the next big moment.
And we need to talk a tiny little bit about what happens because there are fateful occurrences and we do need to hit particular mile markers. And what happens if you have gone far afield of being able to make that choice? It's called the tower moment. The tower in tarot is you even look at the card and you're like, that does not look good. What it actually really is, it is like half the time, like people are on fire in a burning building and jumping out of windows. I'm being so literal. It is a really spooky, scary looking card, but it's also the card of divine intervention. And that's what
Yeah.
happens when you have ignored every hint and clue from both your guides and your spiritual connections to maybe make a different choice, maybe make a different choice. You did almost the same thing I did, which is you pursued things that you had absorbed mostly from the culture around us, society, sometimes the media, as being, I need to do this to be a successful and admired person, to be living my life in a way that will yield the best results. And you thought you would go by a really screwed up society's lesson plan, as I did too, in order to achieve that particular energy. So what happens when we, like I'll use the example of the marriage that I was in. When I clung to it for too long, it was like I was having emotional bombs dropped on my head to really bring focus to you're not supposed to be here any longer. You need to move. And did it really get all the way into, we'll burn this house down around you if we have to? Yeah, almost. It really was that pitched and that dramatic to be like, you've got to go. Because first they'll push you, and then they'll push a little further, and then they're going to shove you. And if you still will not move from something that you are clinging to because of your ego, they will, with the lightning bolt from on high, changing everything. It can be job loss, it can be divorce, it can be, oh, this person that I was absolutely determined was my soulmate, I just found out they have two other people. They married somebody else, had a child with somebody else. Those are tower moments when everything seems to, it is, because some readers relate to the tower as being about failure, of destruction. And some of the guidebooks will talk about that. What it really is a fundamental change in the course of your life because it is needed. The tower is your friend. If you see it in a freaking reading, immediately examine, okay, so that's telling me I need to do something differently, but quick. What is it?
Just huge transformative change. It doesn't necessarily have to be the negative that it is.
It frequently is. It can be upsetting. It can be, but like, for instance, this morning I do a daily draw every day and I have an internal card, and the tower was in my internal card. Now, all that means is, for me, because the tower is also the card of epiphanies, which is about truth. And it's also, since we're talking about divine timing, guess what else the tower means? It means divine timing, divine intervention to keep you on your lesson plan. And that is why, no matter what choices you make, no matter how far afield of the path that you determined before you entered this physical life, no matter how far afield you go, the universe has a plan to blow you up off that path if they need to, if you linger on it too long. But it will only ever enter your life when you have been, again, clinging to things from a place from your emotional damage rather than your emotional well-being and what is best for you and what is best for your purpose that you came here to fulfill. And people hear purpose and they think profession, and it is not the same thing. And you, with wanting to be a psychologist, which people have asked me over and over again, why did you not become a therapist? Because the way that I help people is to point things out to them. And sometimes people need their choices outlined and defined for them. You could do this or you could do that. And therapists don't get to do that.
Right.
They're not meant to guide the journey at all. I am a crossroads guide. I help people be guided. I point the way. You're at a crossroads. There's this path, there's the other path, because it's not just two. There are many paths that we can take. People are guided to me when they're trying to make a decision about what path to go down. And that is why half the time I'm the tower. And it took me a long time to have a good relationship to that, because I've known it for a while. And I'm like, what, am I a force of destruction in this world? No, it is the divine bringing you a very direct message, because guides talk to us not simply through synchronicities, 333, 444, to us through other people a lot. Other people, because we are malleable. We have something that is beyond us, our higher self, that can communicate with other people's higher selves. And so a lot of times people will be telling you the truth that you need to hear, and you'll feel it. There's a difference. When it really does happen, when somebody is bringing you an epiphany versus chattering about whatever, say like, I'm going for Chipotle today at lunch, that is unlikely to be a guide message. But if they tell you something that has a resonant meaning, the resonation is there. You can feel it. I've only ever had it happen to me 2 or 3 times. There is such a big difference in how it feels because we only hear things in the time period that we allow ourselves to hear.
Yeah.
And that is, again, bad marriage I was talking about. I was told when I was 35 years old, this shaman named Mario, which is my favorite detail about him being a shaman. He was Mario. The Mario the shaman told me that this was essentially what I was going to be doing. That I was a healer, I was supposed to be a shaman, and that I needed to go and study to be a shaman, but I would need to leave my husband first. And at that time, even though there was so much evidence of how unhappy I was, like I was abusing the prescription drug Fioricet, which I gave up entirely, cold turkey, no problem with that. But I had actually abused it trying to escape my own feelings, which is very common in trauma survivors. So please, by the way, whatever you've done to get in your own path, please forgive yourself. It is just part of an injury that you are trying to overcome in unhealthy ways. I've done it. You've done it. Most of us do it.
Oh my God.
Like, can you spot a way that you clung to something that far past the point that, and you knew it? Because I can look back and be like, oh man, they were there going, no, not that. Anything but that.
Oh my God. I mean, you definitely stayed on me about. You're always very supportive of my education. I'm not meaning to say that you never.
Yeah, right. I wasn't like, leave school, be ignorant.
Right. But that was definitely, you were also very much like, hey, but like, by the way, you might want to consider this as well. I hesitate to use my marriage as an example, just because there were so many really great things that came out of it. It probably lasted a little longer.
Just a toxic wasteland, but yeah.
Yeah, no. Like, it probably lasted a little bit longer than it should have, but at the same time, like, I got a lot of positivity out of it as well. I'm sure that any of my friends that are going to listen to this will be like, could come up with a million examples of, well, dummy, I don't know if you remember this time that I told you, blah, blah, because at the end of the day, I have been so hashtag blessed with so many great friends who have not really pulled any punches with me over the years. Now, it's not their fault that I'm, incredibly stubborn and think that I know best about my own life most of the time. But so I know those examples exist, but at the same time, I've probably just kind of forgotten about them because I hate being wrong. And
I'm going to tell you the one that I can remember. You managed a particular coffee shop because there was a possibility that they would help pay for your tuition.
Oh, yes. That, we won't speak any names into existence. But
exactly. I'm not invoking anything here.
Yeah. The whole reason I stayed there in that role was because I needed my education paid for and I needed health insurance. And I was the most miserable I had been in a long time for like 6 months trying to make that work. And because that just wasn't where I was supposed to be. Like, there was a huge divergence from the path that I was supposed to be on. And of course I can see that now, but you're absolutely right. Sometimes I just forget that 6 months even happened because it was pretty wild.
It's so hard. And so we were in contact pretty frequently.
Oh yeah, because again, some of my family members would be listening to this and be like, oh yeah, because that's when I got, full disclosure, was got super into drugs and drinking a lot. And I was probably at the lowest I had been probably my entire life, which seems so weird because like I thought I was building my life back together. I just moved back to Arkansas after splitting with my husband, and like everything I thought was going to start working out, but instead I reached probably the lowest I've ever been, and I was just like, what am I doing?
You couldn't, like, anything you tried to put down roots in, it really, like, envision a tornado coming through and being like, not that.
I was just trying so hard to get to that mile marker that I had put in my head that I needed.
Everything will be okay when. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But instead, I missed all the signs along the way to show me that, like, no, sweet baby, no, this is not where you should be. Let's get you out of here. And, I did get out, but I had to burn a very, very important bridge in order to get out. And, I do regret that part of it. But at the same time, I'm much happier. I think, knock on wood, like the happiest I've been in a great number of years. And so I really am hoping that I've learned at least a couple of lessons along the way, especially through that experience, and I'm paying more attention to the minutia of my life and not so much the major cards, as it were.
Yeah. And remember, this is funny because you and I went through a period where so many things were changing in our lives. remember we kept getting majored out on readings, which when you're majored out on a reading,
Yeah.
you can't do anything but draw major arcana, which are difficult to read for details. They're so difficult because you don't get a lot of information. Because it's fate. It's fate. You got to do it. You got to do it. And you did the exact same thing I did, which is you tried to skip over an emotional process that was necessary to your healing to get to the thing that would make you feel better. It was either going to be the job, reaching for a substance, which again, man, sure, I absolutely have. Yeah. A lot of people, and please listen to this, don't judge addiction and substance abuse in the way that you may have been societally told to. Those people aren't weak, they're in pain. People are reaching for painkillers. They're trying to, because they don't know how to effectively heal emotional trauma or difficulty in their life, or nothing ever seems to work out for them. They're reaching for something to numb their feelings. All you're seeing when you see a substance abuser is somebody who is in so much pain, they have had to reach for something else to be able to stand their existence. Please be kind and compassionate towards it. When we try to approach addiction as something that is a trauma response versus a character flaw, it is so much easier for people to heal it. And it is so much easier for people who are actually trapped in using substances to numb their feelings because they don't know how to heal their pain, which is not quite the same thing as addiction. We have a very infantile and like very early understanding of what addiction is. We want to stamp one label on it when it is a diverse set of circumstances that will bring people to substance abuse. And there is a universal kind of approach for helping to heal it, which is approach it as something that needs to be healed. What aren't you looking at in your life when you're trying to make sure that you're not feeling your feelings in the way that you normally would when you're sober? Because at the root of that is the thing that you need to heal, which will free you from the being in pain, which will allow you to walk forward. And, you know, do I use much of anything? Cannabis for sleeping every like few days or so. I eat gummies. And that's all I do these days because that's the best choice for me, because alcohol works as a depressant. But I don't consider myself an addict in anything other than having had codependency. And that's an emotional dependency versus a physical one. And by the way, again, none of these are character flaws. They are evidence of an energetic and an emotional wound at a core and a foundational and a formational level that you can go back without judgment of self, being kind to yourself. Do not judge your own choices. Try to understand why you made them. And that gives you more information for how to heal them. So in the course of divine timing, as soon as you start leaning into, I'm living my life to see what it brings me, that almost immediately makes it takes away that blockage, that stuck energy. That's what we're talking about when you hear divine timing and it seems like, what the heck is it? It could be 4 minutes from now. It is your state of mind and your state of being, not a mark on a calendar or a measure on your clock. And if you can start to approach it that way of, if I do my emotional work to understand my purpose, to understand my own wounds, because we're in charge of healing our own wounds, you will speed up divine timing. And you can actually, because it drops the resistance, because what causes divine timing to be ever elusive and farther away is when we are stuck in this chaotic energy inside of self that we cannot sort out. And at the root of that is always the need to heal.
Right.
So when you're doing readings, when you see things in people's cards that look, because we've talked about this as people who read, how hard it can be to give people bad news, or they're going to encounter challenges or difficult times, because they'll blame the reader like we're making it happen. And so readers, like, do we want to get yelled at? Of course not. But we both give people bad news sometimes because that will help them clear it out of their path more easily. And you've had what did you see recurring in my particular cards, without going into specifics about the people that, like, because I spotted your blockages and you spotted mine.
I mean,
emotional damage leading to poor choices in men, I think.
There's always that, yeah. Well, I think if we talk about divine timing, I think with you, one of the things that I always take away is like, sometimes there there were times where I would sit here and no matter how many decks I used or how many times I pulled cards, there was just no information that was going to be brought to the table.
Oh, because my guys won't give me information sometimes. Yeah.
Right. And I think a part of that goes along with our like divine timing talk, where it's just like you weren't ready for that information for whatever reason. And so we just weren't allowed to have it, which I always found very, very interesting.
Yeah, that I do this for a living and yet I get almost no information. Because I'm basically, with analogies, I am a wide receiver in football. If you give me a ball, I'm going to try to take it all the way down the field immediately.
Sure. Yeah. And like sometimes you're going to get tackled along the way. And
sometimes like I'm tiny, so all the time.
But like with you, I think it was easy. We've had this talk before, I think, about how I've encountered a lot of other readers who are just grossly optimistic and over positive, and that seems to be a trend that I've noticed, especially with younger readers. But with you, like I don't think I've rarely, if ever, shied away from like negativity. Like I've
we both cried in my readings sometimes.
Like there's just sometimes there's some hell going on that we have to talk about. But again, like it was necessary because it gave you some sort of insight to deal with what was coming up.
It always did. It always did. And when I started to learn to approach it that way, it helped.
Sure. And that, I mean, we're always going to have to straddle that line, right, between giving the bad news, but framing it in a way that is helpful. And I think that's the real trick. And I think a lot of like younger people haven't mastered that yet, which that will just come with experience, both life and reading experience. But yeah, just not to shy away from the bad news, because the bad news is necessary in order for us to grow and find that.
We want these easy lives, but we would not learn a great deal from them if our path was entirely smooth. You don't grow. And remember, to prosper is to grow. When something is flourishing, it is actually growing. Growing is actually not all that comfortable. Something to understand about life's purpose is it is very unlikely to be within your comfort zone. It is very likely to be outside of your comfort zone. And the prime example for me was when we first started talking, I had been like given readings by very, very good and like all kinds of information behind this, where you're supposed to do this and help people and you're going to succeed a great deal. And I wanted it to be through something that kept me very distant from other people, which was my YouTube channel, because I was bullied tremendously as a child. And so other people, I've always been a little bit like, I'm not so certain. And I have learned it doesn't bother me any longer because, you know, when you're healed, you know that what other people do is about them, not about you. And so you learn not to take things very personally. You just let people have their emotions, which is one of the keys to allowing people to have that mixed energies of like, hey, this reading is not turning out as well as you want it to. And it's never about gloom and doom. We have a local reader here who, like, she gives all the bad news and none of the good, so people can take it in one or other direction. And is that useful in its own way? It genuinely is. It is to be forewarned is to be forearmed. But when you're getting a reading and you're not getting the results you want, remember denial, which is what happens when people start pushing back. Denial is actually a protective construct within our psyche. So if you cannot accept something, there is a possibility that it is not the time for you to accept it, but that little kernel of doubt can be in there, and that can be the very little thing that wedges in there to help spread light onto a situation. Because as soon as you're looking at something, you cannot heal something you will not look at. And that's what the bad information in readings really serves as a tool of. Think of it as a flashlight going, that's where you're still wounded. This is a difficulty coming up. You probably want to really shore up your defenses, gird your loins for battle, because this is coming. Don't look at it as something is coming along to destroy me, but rather something trusts me enough to be strong enough to handle this.
Dude,
so
and that's what I've
put my armor on
numerous times. Like, this is not like this is negative things going to happen to you. It's more of this is a potential energy here that's coming in that may cause this to happen. So just be aware of it. So that way, you know, like here are the tools for the battle that may or may not be upcoming. Now it's for you to take those tools and do with them what you will. Like, I'm not saying your life is going to blow up. I'm just saying there might be some difficulty that you might want some additional support in, and here's that support. And Godspeed. You still have to fight the battle. Like, I'm not taking that away from you, and I'm not saying it's going to be awful, but like, just know that it's coming up. I feel like you and I do that for each other a lot. Just
Oh
like,
yeah,
hey, I'm not saying that this bad thing's going to happen. Just like, the energy's a little weird around this situation, and
it's
maybe
going to be
you
challenging.
should, yeah, just be ready for the challenge.
Like,
I can't
take
tell
good
you
care of
how.
yourself because you got stuff coming at you.
Right, right, right.
You will get through it, because here's what you need to understand about tarot readings, particularly because I'm a divine conduit. Most people who do tarot readings have the access to the guides of the people that they are reading. And they're trying to give you information about how to best prepare yourself to get the best possible outcomes. They are never trying to, like, if you now, and there are scary readers. We see those depictions in films all the time. Hey, just disregard that stuff. Like, they're not doing it for
It's
the
a very
same
dated
purpose.
view of
Yes.
what the profession is. Let's be real.
Exactly. It's kind of like, if you look at the 1930s film depictions of almost every personality type that we understand, they're very
Mhm.
two-dimensional. And that is a
Right,
two-dimensional form of reading where everything contains nuance. There are levels and there are layers to absolutely everything. And so when you're getting information in your readings that talk about your challenges, understand, dude, that's your lesson plan. It's your
right.
lesson plan. Life is
Hmm.
not out to get you. It is your lesson plan. And there is something in a healing journey that you and I both need to talk about, because we've both experienced it, where you have to shed the idea that something is being done to you, that you are not liked or not loved because things aren't perfect or things aren't easy. Because we want these very easy lives, but you don't learn in easy circumstances. And
Right.
we came here to learn. And is everybody here to learn? Oddly enough, no. Some people, again, use the university analogy. Some people have a different major. Some people, like the people with the law of attraction, they're here to learn how to manipulate energy, which is something that people who do magic, they've already gone through that lifetime. And I'm always trying to get people to understand, it doesn't mean that those are kindergartners and you're a college grad. It
Hmm.
means that this is their lifetime to learn that. There is no hierarchy in lessons.
Hmm.
It is not about one lesson being better than the other. Absolutely everybody's journey is equal, but understand different people are here to learn different things. And
Hmm.
for me, I had to learn how to be emotionally independent at a level that, like, I'm almost way too far into it, because basically I, for the last 2 years, have kept all forms of connection other than friendship. We've talked about this before, how we make really good friends because we can rely on each other, but we do not depend on each other.
Right.
That's what I needed to learn, is to have friends and connections and relationships that I did not depend on as part of my framework. The only person I depend on is me, which is so very, very, very healthy and so much happier. So
Hmm.
try to remember, if crap comes up in your readings or crap is coming up in your life, don't look at it as a permanent condition, but rather, because here's the thing, there is actually a movie, and it's a million years old, but I'm going to go ahead and refer to it. It's called Broke Down Palace, and it has Claire Danes in it and Kate Beckinsale.
Oh
And
man.
they're in a Thailand prison for drug smuggling, and they're innocent. But at the very, very end of it, one of them gets out through the, like, very courageous actions of the other, and the other one is stuck in jail. But she has embraced Buddhist philosophies and understands that freedom is not an exterior set of circumstances, but an interior one. She
Hmm.
is happier, she is healthier, she is more connected to her spiritual purposes, even while she is in jail, because she is free within her mind in the way that she sees herself and she sees others. And
Right.
that's what the universe is frequently trying to teach us when our external circumstances go all the way to poop. It's because you're being asked to examine how you look at your life, and we have so much power in it. When we're trauma survivors, when a bunch of bad things have happened to us, we can get stuck in the why me? Why anybody? There are people who don't have clean drinking water. There are people who they don't have a place to live. They don't have something to eat. Understand, you and that person, absolutely equal. So why did they get a crappy set of circumstances, but you're listening to this in your home? Because life isn't about being fair. It is about Our circumstances bring us the lessons that we asked to learn. And there are people throughout African countries who don't worry about tomorrow because their culture and their experience have taught them there is no point in it, because you have no control over your exterior circumstances, but you have all the control in the world over your interior ones. And how does that play out in your life now?
I mean, one of the biggest things that I tell people along the same vein is like, I have a lot of people who are like, I know that I shouldn't complain about this because, you know, so and so has this going on. I'm just like, well, first of all, like all suffering is equal. Like you don't, your suffering is not less than, you know, the child in Zimbabwe or whatever. Like suffering is suffering, and it sucks no matter what your circumstances are.
We see things from a personal POV.
Right, exactly. So like, one, just throw away that mindset, because you can't work on your healing if you are like, well, like I don't deserve to be healed because my trauma is not as great as someone else's. And I hear that from a lot of people in my circles, where they will eschew their own healing and their own growth because they're like, it's not that bad. Or, you know, in other veins, you know, I, as someone who is a, you know, trauma survivor or whatever, when I talk to others, they are almost in this like cycle of just like, well, this has always been my life. Maybe this is my life. My life's purpose is to suffer. But I'm like, but why? Like, if you don't take that suffering and like funnel it into like growth and use it for something, then it's just suffering for the sake of suffering, which is not why we're here. Like, your soul contract could not possibly have been just to live a miserable existence with no growth. Like, that can't possibly be true. So,
and even when we're suffering, there is something that if we choose to experience it as a positive, as something that is beautiful, as something that enriches our life, then it can improve our set of circumstances, even if we are the kid in Zimbabwe. And you're right, never compare it. It's not a contest, guys. Suffering is not a contest. And if you think that you shouldn't feel the pain of something because other people are in more pain, you only live your experience. And remember, suffering is challenges that brings us the lessons that allow us to grow, to inhabit more peace, more happiness, greater connection, because it isn't about stuff, and it isn't about anything that you can bring towards you in a material sense. It is about your connection to a divine source. And please do not think the God of the Bible when you hear that, because all religions have grasped onto the idea of a divine presence, which we cannot understand in this form. Nobody's right, guys. Everybody's right and nobody's right. How can that be possible? Because we're all trying to break down something that is beyond our current understanding, because it is much bigger than us. So when you hear the words divine and the divine purpose and anything having to do with God or anything, please divorce yourself from the idea of a man-made structure that is religion. That is a power structure utilizing a connection versus creating it. You have your connection no matter where you walk through this life. Look for it and find it. And if you don't believe in a higher power, that's absolutely fine. Believe in the highest aspect of yourself, and it does the exact same thing. Being the best person you can be connects you to what we call the divine. So, any closing words about something to do when you get that, oh crap, divine timing, or it's divine timing, or there's tough challenges coming up? When you see that in a tarot reading, what do you think people should do?
You know, just, this sounds silly, but like, just buckle up, because like it is necessary. Like I'm not gonna. I hate this phrase of like, God will never give you more than you can handle.
Oh, I hate that too, because people will be sobbing and screaming in
because
it.
It's not true. But what I will say is,
God will challenge the crap out of you, quite frankly.
He only gives the hardest battles to his best soldiers. That's not true. Your life is going to suck sometimes, but try to find in any kind of like bad situation like that, there is going to be nuggets of information and for growth for you. I didn't always realize it at the time whenever I was experiencing it, but I can look back on it and see them in retrospect. And I wish that I had been given more knowledge back then of how to see those things in the moment. And so if you come to me and I give you bad news, or, you know, tell you something quote unquote negative, just know that it is because I want you to be able to see that that nugget of truth and growth in the moment, and not have to wait 2+ years to find
Mm.
it later and be like, oh, I'm so far behind where I could have been, blah blah blah, like I did. To see the situation for what it is, find the growth in that moment, and then utilize it for that growth moving forward.
Well, and I'm going to keep flogging the educational analogy, because
Mhm.
instead of thinking of it as like, oh crap, this terrible thing's going to come and get me, think of it as your lesson plan, and this is your test. If you
That's
get
such a
bad
good point.
news in a reading, that is forewarning you that there's going to be a really hard test around your own healing. And by the way, as you reach healing plateaus, you and I have been experiencing this, because we'll both be like, I'm so much better than I used to be. I'm so much more patient. I'm so much like, as soon as you get like, I have arrived, the universe will be like, it's time to bring on the next level. And
Right, right,
then
right. Yeah,
they
this
get
is a
easier and
constant.
easier.
Yeah, you're never going to reach the peak. Like, you might plateau every once in a while, but like, we are here to learn lessons. That is our purpose, as it stands. And so you're never going to get to the peak, but
Right.
enjoy the plateaus when you get to them, of course. But you know, there's going
Life
to be
is
more.
an
more
animated force. Life is
yes.
an active energy. Please quit trying to settle into a set of circumstances. And I'm always begging people, if you believe this phrase that is actually antithetical to joy, which is I hate change.
hmm hmm
Please, for the love of God, embrace change
hmm
as being necessary in life to continue to grow, to be vital, which is that animating life force. Everything that brings us a set of circumstances that challenges us allows us to grow, allows us to have more energy, allows us to have more animating force. And in that, there is the ability to experience more love, more joy, greater happiness. Everything that tries to expand us is not just expanding us in our ability to conquer suffering or difficulty or challenges. It allows us to be happier, healthier, more joyful, and more loving. Every single energy contains its opposite. If you have had your frickin' butt kicked by grief, by loss, by despair, by destruction, understand it is expanding that energy in your life, and everything has its opposite. If you will reach for that opposite, it will
hmm
be there. If you understand that it is not something that comes to you and finds you, but rather something that you choose to embody and invite. And that's the key to divine timing, is understanding that you are actually the person who causes that clock to move by the state of mind and the state of being that you are trying to inhabit. Hey, Jacob, as always, I love talking to you about this stuff because we both groove on it. Where can people find you, my dude?
At this point, my website should be up and running, so you can
Woo!
go check it out there. But I will always be on Facebook as well. Southern Style Readings on Facebook, www.southernstylereadings.com.
I'll drop a
And
link in the episode description as well if you're looking for that. There will be links in all of the descriptions for episodes to find my guests and where to book them.
but yeah, other than that, that's where you find me.
All right. Thank you, Jacob. As always, you're fascinating to talk to, and you've been such a good friend to me, and I just love the hell out of you, man. Hey, thanks
Oh,
so much for joining us here. I am Alane. You can find me at therisingmoon.com. You can book a reading through there. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Cronecast at the Rising Moon. And this is Logical Magic Examining Esoterica. Go forth, live magically, learn your lessons, expand your universe, and never resent divine timing, because it's trying to help you and it has nothing to do with the passage of time. Take care. Be well, my friends.